Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to Australia for the first time in quite a wee while actually. I think the last beer that I reviewed from Australia was one of the Pirate Life ones, so that's a good few months ago. But for this one we're going to go to the state of Victoria, we're going to go to Melbourne and a part of the city called Dandenong, which is kind of to the southeast. And for this one we're having my first taste of a beer from a brewery who I've known specifically for their artwork, because it is pretty distinctive. So for this one we're going to go to Kaiju Beer and we're having a taste of the Kaiju Crush, and this one's described as a tropical pale ale and it comes in at 4.7%. From what I understand, this was the first beer that they canned, and it was one that they intended to be exported. These guys export their beers to Korea, I'm not sure about Japan actually, but they do Korea, Taiwan, and they are looking at China. So this was a beer that was intended for export, and I think that's the reason why I got this one over in Scotland as well. And I think in Sweden and Denmark actually, or Denmark at least, you can get these beers too. So when I head back over there, hopefully I can get some of the other Kaiju ones for you in the future. But anyway, looking forward to trying this one, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer. So as usual then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you want to get straight to the tasting, of course, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, link to my future reviews that hopefully I can do from Kaiju Beer. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, of course. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city or state, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Australian beers that I've reviewed for, and that's being added to whenever I can. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Kaiju Beer then before we taste the beer. So Kaiju Beer were founded back in 2013 by brothers Nat and Callum Reeves. Nat has a science background apparently, and he's the head brewer, while Callum makes the cider at the brewery, and he also deals with the business side of things and all the boring admin work as it was put on the website. But originally the company was called Monster Mash, and the beers, as I said, are quite distinctive for their artwork. But the first beer that they produced was a double IPA, and this beer is now known as Aftermath. But for some reason early on in their existence basically, they had to actually change the name, and they were already referring to the cartoon character on the Aftermath as Kaiju, and of course that name actually comes from a Japanese film, and the word itself means strange beast, but it kind of makes sense, you know. It's quite a cool name actually, and they decided to take this as the full name of the brewery, and they've maintained that ever since that name change. But as I mentioned to you, the brewery are based in Dandenong, which is in the kind of southeastern part of the city, and over the years they've been continuing to invest in increasing their capacity. They purchased a canning line in 2016, and they introduced this beer, the Kaiju Crush, for export and things. Like I was saying at the start of the video, they export their beers to the likes of Taiwan, China and stuff like that, and this beer was intended to kind of get their beer to a wider audience. It's kind of a gateway beer, they intended this one by the sounds of it. But this was the first beer that they canned, and soon after they started canning their other beers as well. And these guys have been a success story. I've seen quite a lot of people raving about them on the Australian Craft Beer Crew Facebook page. These guys seem to get a lot of rave reviews and things like that, and the artwork on the beer, of course, is designed by Mickey Burton. In their core range they've got 8 different beers. They had a double IPA, they had a regular IPA, there was a red ale as well, a black IPA, which I think was called like Behemoth on the Moon or something like that. They also had a double red ale, I think there was a stout in there as well, and then they had this one too. There's a couple of other different beers, but they do seem to be doing really, really well, and it's cool that we're finally starting to see more of these Australian beers travel kind of further afield, because I think Australia is going to be quite an exciting place to look at for beer over the next little while. Melbourne and Perth seem to be the main hubs of that at the moment. I think Sydney's starting to catch up a little bit. But Melbourne, Victoria and Western Australia, and Perth in particular, have been the kind of hubs for craft beer recently. A lot of people regard Melbourne in Australia as the kind of food and drink capital, although Perth, I think, some people might argue that it's Perth from what I gather. But the Australian craft beers that I tried when I was over there, I was pretty impressed with, and I think we're going to start to see a lot more Australian hops as well. There seems to be a lot, of course in Australia you've got a hell of a lot of farmland, so I think we're going to start seeing a lot more varieties of Australian hops arrive. I mean, we've got Ella, there's Galaxy, Victoria's Secret, and a whole host of other ones starting to take off there. So I think Australia is going to be a really good hop destination, as New Zealand has been for a number of years over the next little while. So exciting times when it comes comes to Australian craft beer, and have a look through my playlist and you can get an idea of some of the other beers that are out there. There are a few Australian beer reviewers out there too, so have a look for them, and they're doing some pretty interesting videos. So yeah, that's all you really need to know about the brewery just now, and you can have a look to all the links and follow these guys on Facebook and stuff and keep up to date with what's going on at Kaiju Beer. But hopefully I can review some of their other beers for you in the fairly near future. But I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork of this one then before we open it up. Really nicely presented. This, as I said, this brewery are really distinctive for their artwork. I really love that there, the kind of pineapple monster just kind of chilling there in the sand at the beach. There's a little bit about the beer on the back, so I'll just read that out to you quickly. So it says, after generations of kaiju interacting with local flora, a new species arose. The Frujus found the balmy weather and laid-back pace in tropical climes to their liking, settling many remote islands, but always on guard for those who would seek to exploit their mouth-watering juiciness and impeccable balance. There you can see all the different fruits there on the back of the ship there, which is pretty cool. So without further ado then, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. Really looking forward to trying my first beer from Kaiju Brewery. It's one of these things, I always find if a brewery have really nice artwork, it's always kind of a really positive thing. If the beer matches up to that, then it's always a very good thing. So as you can see, and as you would expect from a pale ale, this one's poured a really quite bright yellow golden colour. You can see there's a finger and a half of a frothy white head on this one. Some big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass and quite a few little ones just heading up towards the bottom of that head there. The beer is actually quite transparent. There is a little bit of opacity to it, a little bit of haze, but not too much. You can see if I put my fingers behind the glass there, you can see there is a degree of transparency to this one. But overall, it looks really nice, and it kind of is the colour and things that you would expect from a pale ale. And you can smell some of these lovely tropical fruits coming off this just as you've opened it up. So let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on. Incidentally, this can was a 375ml one, which I'm not sure if that's a standard in Australia, but for me, that's a little bit of an unusual measurement. Normally it's a 330. But yeah, with this one, it really does, as you would kind of expect, to be honest, it does smell like a kind of tropical fruit sort of thing. There's a bit of tangerine in there as well, though, I think. Maybe they've used a wee bit of mosaic or something in here. Although there is one of the Australian hops that, if I remember rightly, does give you a little bit of a kind of orangey note as well. But for me, yeah, there's a bit of pineapple in there, a wee bit of passion fruit, I think, as well, which, if I'm remembering right, is Galaxy. That gives you a nice passion fruity note. So I do wonder if that's in here. But yeah, mangoes, maybe a little bit of citra or something like that. Pineapples, definitely. That's what's making me think mosaic, actually, because there is a sort of tangerine note and also pineapple, which are two of the quite distinctive notes of mosaic. Passion fruit, definitely, which it could be Simcoe, but I think it's more likely to be Galaxy in this case. But yeah, definitely some mangoes. I think mangoes, pineapples, passion fruit, and a bit of a sort of, I don't know, there's maybe there's something else in there. I'm trying to figure out what that is. But yeah, mangoes, pineapples, passion fruit, a little bit of tangerine. Maybe there's a wee bit of lychee or something coming out of that later on as well. Yeah. But it's definitely, the main point to take away is, and as you would expect from the name, it is pretty much, pardon me, a sort of tropical fruit kind of thing. There's a little bit of floral quality to it, but I would say the bitter side of the hops really leans a bit more towards the grassy side of things. And there is a wee bit of malty sweetness to this. You can smell there's a little bit of bready character there, and there's a wee bit of a kind of almost, it's almost like butterscotchy, to be honest. There's almost a little bit of a kind of buttery, kind of a biscuity sweetness to this beer as well, which is quite unusual. The malt base on this one does come across as quite unusual. And I think they said on the website with this one, the idea with this beer was that they wanted to use it as a kind of gateway beer to their more bitter things, and I think that was why this one was more intended for export to China and things like that, where they're not as used to craft beer as they are in Australia and other countries these days. So yeah, as I always say then, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck in, but let's have a go at this one now. So this one is the Krush from Kaiju Beer in Dandenong in eastern Melbourne in Australia. Let's get stuck into this beer. Slàinte, skål. Yeah, that's pretty nice actually. I'm surprised. You know, I bought this from one of my local beer stores, so they know how to store their beers, of course. But it's actually pretty good how fresh that beer is. You know, distributors and stuff, when it comes to like Australian and New Zealand beer, in the past I've had beer where it's still been pretty good. When it comes to actually buying beers from Australia and New Zealand, I'm usually a bit more along the lines of wanting to buy the likes of the Scotch ales and the stouts and the porters and things, just because they travel a little bit better than the IPAs. But for me, this one, I'm glad that this beer is coming in, and you can tell that it's fairly fresh. So that's one of the things that distributors and stuff need to work on if they're bringing these Australian and New Zealand beers out of the country, because of course you would need to pretty much bottle them up and then get them on the ships the next day or something so that they can mature. And of course then you've got storage issues with them being left to kind of mature at the right temperatures and things. But I'm glad that this beer is pretty fresh. You can tell with that one, with that right away with this beer. But yeah, you can tell as well that it's quite well done. It's quite, this beer, you know, it's quite sort of simple in what it's aiming to do, but it does it well. It's another one of these ones. I keep saying that about these IPAs kind of recently and pale ales and stuff like this, but this one is definitely one of those beers that fits into that regard of being just quite well done. So the malt base is quite simple. It's got this, you can feel the pale malty character just going right across the middle of your tongue. As the beer kind of mellows out a little bit, I think there is a wee bit of a butterscotchy flavour kind of thing almost in the middle of your palate. There is a little bit of a grainy note kind of pushes its way out after a while as well, so you get that smoother bready note, a little bit of a grainy quality to it, and then there's this butterscotch and very slightly sort of biscuity flavour in the middle of the palate too. But the grainy notes, it just, this little bit of a grainy quality really starts to push its way out a little bit later on. But yeah, I like how this one goes together. So in the back corners of the palate, there's a tiny little touch of earthiness there, maybe a little bit of herbal quality in front of that, but as you come further forward along the sides of the tongue, you've got this nice and almost quite spicy floral quality there. Round at the front corners of the palate, you can really feel, just behind that, you can start to feel the sort of spiciness of the floral qualities of the beer. Round the very front curve of the palate as well, it starts to get just a little bit lighter and sort of grassy, which is quite nice. If you just go behind the front curve of the palate, as I always say, that's where you get this little oily bubble, where the nice kind of juicy, fruity qualities start to come out of the beer. But yeah, this is nice, that. I like these kind of fruity qualities. This one, it's quite interesting. I don't think I've come across quite as many pale ales, or all that many pale ales that lean towards this kind of tropical side of things. A lot of the ones, I mean, you do get the ones, for example, that are citra pale ales and stuff like that. Those are quite popular in Europe, but this one is kind of, it does have a sort of fruit salady quality on the fruit side of things. It's really quite interesting. So yeah, what I would say about the fruity side of this one then, there's definitely a bit of that passion fruit. I always find that passion fruit and grapefruit have a little bit of that kind of darker flavour. There is maybe a little bit of grapefruit to this one, and on top of that you can feel a little bit of the passion fruit. But as the flavour mellows out a little bit, you start to get the kind of tropical fruit complexities. I think there's a wee bit of a tangerine note in there, so I do wonder if they've maybe used mosaic in this one, because there's definitely that sort of lighter tangerine flavours. I always say that Amarillo, for example, always gives you this quite oily orange, and this one for me, the mosaic always just gives you that lighter kind of tangerine flavour, but there's pineapple there at the end as well, and I always find those are the two fruits that are distinctive of mosaic, so I do wonder if they've used a bit of mosaic in this beer. And there's a wee bit of a kind of lychee sort of flavour later on, maybe a little bit of gooseberry as well, which is quite interesting to me. That indicates they've used a bit of citra. I would suspect that the passion fruit might be a little bit of Galaxy in this one. Galaxy gives you this really nice passion fruit quality from what I remember, so that might be what they're doing with this beer. I would be interested to know what hops they've used in it, because of course when it comes to Australia they've got a kind of different availability things. It's probably a lot of New Zealand hops and a lot of Australian hops that they're using primarily. There will be some American ones used in there as well, right enough. So it would be really cool to know that, and that's one thing I always look for when I'm getting beers from different countries. Slovenia, for example, in Europe, they've got a lot of their own hops as well, so you do get some really interesting hoppy qualities in the Slovenian IPAs and stuff like this. But it's a really nice beer, this one, and I do like how it goes together. In terms of a pale ale, it's really good and quite easy drinking. I just like how it goes together. You know, it's not one that's going to blow your head off in terms of IBUs. The tropical fruit quality that this one has, I think, is quite unique. It's hard to think of a pale ale that I've had in Europe that compares to this one. which is quite interesting as well, but it's definitely a little bit of a fruit salad. It reminds me a little bit actually of a fruit IPA that I had from Toil, which was called Garden of Eden. That had a load of different kind of tropical fruits in it, and this one is a little bit like that, but it's a bit more kind of straight up and hoppy. The one from Toil, of course, you had a bit of a juicier mouthfeel around the edge of your tongue because the fruit was being added to the beer, so that kind of suppresses a little bit of the sort of bitter components of the hops. But for me, this one was quite a nice, just hop extracted fruit, this one. It's got that nice hoppy, juicy bitterness to it. But I just like how all the flavours go together in this one. As I said at the start, this beer is quite kind of straight up in what it's trying to do, but it does it really pretty well. So have a go at this beer and see what you think of it for yourself. If you're watching in Europe, this definitely is quite an interesting pale ale. I don't think you're going to find many over here that you can really compare to this one. But in terms of the mouthfeel then, I would say this one is light to mid-bodied. Carbonation does have a little bit of a prickle of it. Of course, Australia at certain places can be a really hot country, so this beer probably is a good summer beer over there. Melbourne, of course, though, Victoria and Tasmania and stuff can get really pretty cold, like European level cold and things like that during the winters. So this beer I would say is probably more of a summer beer for them. I'd be interested to hear Australian thoughts on that, right enough. But the mouthfeel on this one leans a little bit more towards the wet side of things. There's a little bit of oily quality there, but I'd say more a wet, which again suits the kind of summer beer quality. There's a good little bit of hoppy bitterness. It's not going to blow your head off in terms of IBUs. The malt base, like I said, has a good balance between sweetness, but I think it leans a little bit more towards the kind of grainy side of things. There's a bit of smoothness in there as well, but I think there's a little bit of that kind of grainy bitterness in there. Some juicy tropical fruit qualities. It has a little bit of that darker thing kind of backing it up, which is nice as well. And there's a good, as I say, that's a good way to summarise this one. It's just quite a nice, refreshing sort of pale ale. This one has a little bit of crispness that would make it a really good summer beer, but the flavours go together really well, and it's all just about how everything kind of slots together. It's one of these pale ales that goes kind of straight down the middle in what it aims. It leans towards the tropical fruit side of things, so if that's your kind of flavour profile, you are going to enjoy this one quite a lot. But I'd love to try their double red ale and their black IPAs and things like that. I do hope that we can get some of the Kaiju beers over here. It'd be really cool to be able to review those for you. But as I always say, Australian beer is pretty difficult to get in Europe, so maybe I'll need to go there again and do a craft beer tour or something like that. So hopefully I can return to Australia in the next couple of years and review more of these beers for you, because I had very good experiences there in the past, and Kaiju, like I say, are a brewery that seem to be getting a lot of plaudits, so a thumbs up to them when it comes to the Kaiju Krush, and hopefully we can revisit them in the future. But yeah, really interesting pale ale, this one at 4.7%. It covers its alcohol quite well as well, but a really good summer beer, I think, and that's probably a good way to sign off with this beer review. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know your favourite beers actually from Kaiju, so it'll be really interesting to hear that, and do let me know some other Australian beers and breweries that I might not have heard of yet, because I know there's a big development going on over there. Check out my Australian beer playlist as well, and you can see the other ones that I've reviewed before as well, and hopefully I can return to Australia fairly soon. But this was the Kaiju Krush from Kaiju Beer in Dandenong in Melbourne in Victoria in Australia. Hopefully I can do more Australian beers for you soon. Slanging just now, and I will catch you guys very soon. A really quite nice sort of summer pale ale, this beer. Cheers.